My name is Sheriff David Kessler, and I'm recording this confession 3 days after the last incident in Barrow, Alaska. The FBI wants answers. I can't give them. Not the kind they'd believe anyway. Barrow sits at the edge of nowhere, where the Arctic Ocean meets a landscape that nature forgot to finish. Population 873. Make that 841 now. 32 people. Don't just vanish in 4 days. Not in a town where everyone knows everyone's business. But they did vanish. And I know why. This started as a missing persons case. Standard procedure, paperwork, search parties. Then it became something else entirely. Something that's been moving through these frozen wastes long before anyone ever set foot on this ice. The incipient elders have a word for it. Tornarsuk, the ancient wanderer. I used to think their stories were just folklore, ways to keep children from wandering too far into the tundra. I don't think that anymore. If you're watching this, let me know what time you're viewing and what city you're from. Maybe your comments will help me figure out if this thing followed me south. Maybe they'll help someone else recognize the signs before it's too late. Because I don't think Barrow was its only territory. The call came in at 11:43 p.m. on October 15th. Polar night had settled over Barrow 6 days earlier, bringing with it the kind of darkness that weighs on your soul. No sun for the next 65 days, just endless black sky and the northern lights painting green spirits across the horizon. Mariyuki's voice crackled through the radio static. "Sheriff, I need you at the Nalukatak Community Center. We got a situation." Mary ran the night shift for our volunteer dispatcher service. 23 years in Barrow, never called me unless someone was in trouble or missing. Her tone told me this was the latter. I pulled on my parka and stepped into air so cold it stung my lungs. -37 degrees, no wind. The kind of night where your breath crystallizes before it hits the ground. My boots crunched across snow that sparkled like crushed diamonds under the streetlights. The community center sat at the heart of our small downtown district. 8 buildings clustered together like frightened animals, connected by wooden walkways to keep people safe during storms. Steam rose from every chimney, creating ghostly columns that disappeared into the black sky. Mary waited outside, her face pale in the sodium light. "It's Tommy Kakik," she said. "His mother's been calling since 9. He never came home from work." Tommy worked maintenance at the North Slope Research Station, 5 miles outside town, 24 years old, reliable as clockwork, not the type to disappear without word. "When did his shift end?" I asked. 7 p.m. He always stops at Pepe's for coffee before heading home. Pepe says he never showed. We drove out to the research station in my patrol SUV. The facility studied permafrost changes and climate data, government contract, all very official and organized. The station manager, Dr. Sarah Chen, met us at the gate. She'd worked there 3 years, kept to herself mostly, professional type from somewhere down south. Tonight she looked worried. "Tommy's truck is still in the parking lot," she said, pointing to a blue pickup coated in frost. His supervisor said he finished his rounds at 6:30, signed out normally. I examined the truck, keys still in the ignition, wallet on the dashboard, coffee cup in the holder, contents frozen solid. Tommy's thermos sat on the passenger seat, still half full. "Has he been acting strange lately?" I asked Dr. Chen. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite her heavy coat. "Actually, yes. Last week, he started asking questions about the deep core samples, wanted to know what we'd found in the permafrost." "What did you find?" "Organic material. Very old, pre-Columbian by several thousand years. Tommy seemed disturbed by it somehow." The station's interior felt warm compared to outside, but something cold crawled up my spine as we walked through the corridors. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. Dr. Chen led us to Tommy's last known location, Storage Room C, where he'd been cataloging equipment. The room smelled of machine oil and something else, something organic that made my stomach turn. I found Tommy's gloves on the floor near a storage cabinet. They were inside out, as if torn off in a hurry. Dark stains marked the concrete beside them. "Is this what I think it is?" I asked, kneeling down. Dr. Chen leaned closer, then stepped back quickly. I don't know. It doesn't look normal." She was right. The stains were darker than they should be, almost black, with a consistency like old motor oil. They led from the gloves to a ventilation grate in the far wall. The grate screws lay scattered on the floor. "That vent leads outside," Dr. Chen said, "but it's too small for a person to fit through." I shined my flashlight into the opening. The beam revealed a narrow shaft that angled downward into darkness. Scratch marks scored the metal walls, deep gouges that looked like they'd been made by something with claws. Something had definitely gone through that vent, something with claws and the strength to tear through steel mesh. But Tommy Kakik weighed 200 pounds and stood 6 feet tall. No way he'd fit through a space barely 14 inches wide. That's when I first suspected we weren't dealing with a normal disappearance. 3 more people vanished over the next 48 hours, and each disappearance became more disturbing than the last. Lisa Putu Guk disappeared from her home Tuesday morning. Her husband found their front door wide open, snow blown halfway across the living room. Lisa's coffee still steamed on the kitchen counter. Her shoes sat by the door, but her coat was gone. But here's what didn't make sense. Lisa's footprints in the snow stopped halfway to the street, just ended, like she'd been lifted into the air. The second was James Uki, Murray's nephew. He vanished while walking from the school to his girlfriend's house, a journey he'd made hundreds of times. Security camera at the school showed him leaving at 4:15 p.m. Camera at the girlfriend's house, 2 blocks away, never recorded his arrival. 2 blocks, 3 minutes of walking. He'd simply vanished in broad daylight. I found her car running outside the research station Wednesday evening, driver's door open, purse still on the seat. Security cameras showed her leaving the building at 5:15 p.m. The next frame, 3 seconds later, showed an empty parking lot. 3 seconds. Whatever took her moved faster than cameras could capture. I called the Alaska State Police for backup, but the nearest trooper was 6 hours away by snowmobile. Weather had grounded all aircraft. We were on our own until the storm passed. That night, I gathered what was left of the town council in my office. Mayor Jim Kangu, school principal Angela Natar, and Father Michael Kowalski from St. Mary's Catholic Church. 4 of us to figure out how 32 people could disappear from a town with no roads in or out. "It's not possible," Mayor Kanguk insisted. "Barrow has 1 airport, closed by weather. No boats can reach us with the sea ice. Where could they go?" Father Kowalski fingered his prayer beads. Polish immigrant, who'd served our community for 12 years. Good man, though prone to seeing divine intervention everywhere. Perhaps they're hiding somewhere, waiting out some kind of threat. "What threat?" I asked. "And why wouldn't they tell their families?" Principal Natar had been quiet throughout our discussion. Finally, she spoke. "The children have been having nightmares, all of them, the past 2 weeks. Same dream, something moving in the dark, something old and searching." She pulled out a stack of drawings from her briefcase. Children's artwork in crayon and colored pencil. Each one showed the same thing, a massive dark shape with glowing eyes, standing over tiny human figures. "This is what they're dreaming about," she said. "Every single child in school." I studied the drawings. Despite being created by different children of various ages, they shared disturbing similarities. The creature in each picture had the same basic shape, tall, elongated, with disproportionately long arms, and the eyes, yellow or green, always glowing. The Inupiat kids are calling it Tornarsuk. Principal Natar continued. They say their grandparents told stories about it, something that moves during the long dark. Mayor Kanguk shifted uncomfortably. He was Inupiat himself, third-generation Barrow resident. Those are just stories. Folklore. Maybe, I said, but folklore usually has roots in truth. I'd been thinking about the pattern of disappearances. All 4 victims had vanished without trace, leaving behind belongings and no signs of struggle. All 4 had been alone when it happened, and all 4 had disappeared during the polar night. The timing couldn't be coincidental. I need to talk to the elders, I told them, someone who knows the old stories. Elijah Anenataguk was 93 years old, and the closest thing Barrow had to a tribal historian. He lived in a small house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by carved whalebone and traditional tools passed down through generations. I found him carving a piece of walrus ivory by lamplight. His fingers moved with practiced precision, despite his age. When I told him about the disappearances, he set down his knife and looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. Tornarsuk has awakened, he said simply. Tell me about it. Elijah poured 2 cups of tea from a pot that seemed perpetually brewing on his stove. The liquid was dark and bitter, made from some plant I couldn't identify. My great-grandfather told me the story when I was 7 years old. During the harsh winter of 1896, people were disappearing then too. He settled into his worn armchair, speaking in the careful English he'd learned at the mission school decades ago. Long ago, before outsiders came to our land, our people knew to respect the Tornarsuk. It sleeps deep in the permafrost, waiting for the long dark. When it wakes, it searches. Searches for what? Sustenance, but not just physical. It feeds on life essence itself, takes everything that makes a person who they are, leaves nothing behind. Elijah stood and retrieved a carved bone mask from a wooden chest. The mask depicted the same creature from the children's drawings. Long snout, hollow eye sockets, elongated skull. This is how our ancestors remembered it. They made offerings during polar night, left provisions at the boundary stones to keep it satisfied. When they stopped making the offerings, he didn't need to finish. I understood. How do you stop it? You don't stop Tornarsuk. You appease it or you avoid it. Our people learned to coexist with it for thousands of years. But the research station, he shook his head. They've been digging deep, disturbing things that should stay buried. The organic material Dr. Chen had mentioned, pre-Columbian samples from the permafrost. They found something, didn't they? I asked. Elijah nodded gravely. They found its resting place, and they woke it up. That night, I sat in my office, staring at case files and trying to make sense of everything. 32 people missing in 4 days. A creature from Inupiat folklore. A research station that had been drilling into permafrost for 3 years. My radio crackled. Mary Uki's voice tight with fear. Sheriff, we got another one. Betty Nashukpuk. Her daughter found signs of struggle. I was getting tired of finding crime scenes with no witnesses. Betty Nashukpuk's house sat at the end of a Kovac street, a small 2-bedroom place she'd shared with her adult daughter. When I arrived, I found something different from the previous disappearances. This time, there were signs of a struggle. The kitchen table was overturned. Chairs scattered across the linoleum floor. Scratch marks scored the wooden cabinets. Deep gouges that went straight through to the particle board underneath. And there were dark stains, not the normal kind, but the same black substance from the research station, drops and smears leading from the kitchen to the back door. Betty's daughter Ruth sat crying in the living room while Mary Uki tried to comfort her. I was at work, Ruth sobbed. Mom was making dinner when I left. When I came home, I found this. I followed the trail outside. It led across the backyard to a gap in the fence, then disappeared into the snow beyond. But something else caught my attention. Footprints. 2 sets. The first set belonged to Betty. Size 7 snow boots, distinctive tread pattern that matched a pair sitting by her front door. The prints showed her running, long strides indicating panic. The second set didn't belong to any human being. They were massive, nearly twice the length of Betty's prints and 4 times as wide. But they weren't bear tracks. The shape was wrong, too elongated, with clear impressions of what looked like claws at the front of each pad. The tracks followed Betty's footprints for about 50 yards. Then both sets simply ended. No sign of struggle at the final spot, no stains. They just stopped, as if both Betty and whatever was pursuing her had been lifted into the air. I called in additional help from Utiagvik, but weather kept postponing their arrival. Meanwhile, panic was spreading through Barrow like wildfire. People were securing themselves in their homes, refusing to go out after dark. Not that it seemed to matter. The creature appeared capable of reaching anyone, anywhere. Thursday night, I decided to stake out the research station. If the thing was connected to whatever they dug up, maybe it would return to the source. I parked my SUV in the shadows between 2 prefab buildings and settled in to wait. Thermos of coffee, radio, service weapon loaded probably wouldn't do much good against something that could tear through steel, but it made me feel better. The northern lights were particularly active that night. Green and blue curtains dancing across the star-filled sky. Beautiful and eerie at the same time. The kind of light show that made you understand why ancient peoples thought the heavens were alive. Around 2 a.m., I heard it. A sound like nothing I'd ever encountered before. Part howl, part mechanical screech, part something else entirely. It came from somewhere beyond the research station, out in the endless tundra. Then I saw movement. A dark shape emerged from behind the main building. At first I thought it was a person bundled up against the cold, but as it moved into the light cast by the facility's exterior lamps, I realized my mistake. The thing stood at least 9 feet tall. Its body was elongated, almost skeletal, covered in what looked like coarse dark fur. Arms that hung nearly to the ground ended in hands tipped with claws that gleamed like polished bone. And the head was wrong, too large for the body, with a snout that reflected the facility lights, yellow eyes that seemed to glow with their own internal fire. Tornarsuk, the ancient wanderer. It moved with predatory grace, testing the air with its snout, looking for something, or someone. I held my breath and tried not to move. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I knew that would be fatal. Predators chase things that run. The creature circled the research station once, then approached the main entrance. It pressed its snout against the glass doors and breathed, fogging the surface. Then it did something that made my spine freeze. It spoke, not in any human language, but I understood the meaning anyway. The words seemed to bypass my ears entirely and sink directly into my mind. More, searching, need more. The glass doors, locked and reinforced, simply opened at its touch. No force applied, no breaking. They just swung inward, as if the creature had used a key. It disappeared inside the building. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. The research station's interior felt different in the dark. Familiar hallways seemed longer, shadows deeper. My flashlight beam revealed nothing unusual, but I could sense the creature's presence, that organic scent I'd noticed before, stronger now. I followed the trail toward the storage areas in the back of the building, the place where Tommy Kakik had first vanished. My boots squeaked on the polished floor, despite my efforts to move quietly. Storage room C's door stood open. Inside, I found chaos. Equipment scattered everywhere, file cabinets overturned, And in the center of the room, a hole in the concrete floor that definitely hadn't been there before. The hole was perfectly circular, about 6 feet across, with smooth edges that looked melted rather than broken. My flashlight revealed a tunnel that descended into darkness beyond the reach of my beam. Scratch marks covered the walls around the opening, the same claw marks I'd seen on the ventilation grate, but larger, much larger. Something glinted at the bottom of the visible shaft. I knelt down and aimed my light more carefully. Objects, personal belongings, scattered among debris. I recognized Tommy Kakic's watch among the items. The tunnel system must have been there all along, hidden beneath the research station. The creature had used the facility's drilling operations to open new access points, creating a network of passages that allowed it to move undetected throughout the town. That explained how it could appear and disappear so quickly, how it could take people without leaving trace evidence at the scene. A sound echoed up from the depths below. That same howl screech I'd heard outside, but muffled by distance and stone. Tornarsuk was down there, in its domain, with whatever remained of the 32 missing people. I should have left then, called for backup, waited for professional help, done anything except what I actually did. Instead, I started climbing down into the tunnel. The shaft descended about 20 feet before opening into a natural cave system. Ancient ice covered the walls, formed over thousands of years by the slow freeze and thaw of Arctic seasons. My breath came out in visible puffs as the temperature dropped well below anything I'd experienced on the surface. The tunnel branched in multiple directions, creating a maze that extended far beyond the reach of my flashlight. But I didn't need to guess which way to go. The scent guided me, that organic aroma that seemed to come from somewhere deep in the earth. I followed it for what felt like hours, though my watch showed only 20 minutes had passed. Time moved differently down here. The darkness pressed against me like a living thing, making every shadow seem to shift and breathe. The tunnel eventually opened into a vast underground chamber. My light couldn't reach the ceiling or far walls, but I could sense the space around me. The way sound echoed suggested something enormous. And then I saw them. The missing people of Barrow, arranged in neat rows across the cavern floor, all 32 of them, including Tommy Kakic and Dr. Chen and Betty Nashukpuk, but they weren't gone. They were changing. Each person lay still, eyes closed, breathing slowly, but their bodies were different, stretched, elongated, arms and legs growing longer, faces becoming more angular, skin taking on a grayish pallor. They were becoming something else, something like the creature that had taken them. Tornarsuk stood at the center of the chamber, watching over its captives like a shepherd tending flock. In the beam of my flashlight, I could see it clearly for the first time. It had once been human. The basic structure was still there, buried beneath layers of change. This was what happened to people who disappeared during the long dark. They didn't die. They were transformed into something new, something different. The creature turned toward me, yellow eyes reflecting my flashlight beam. When it spoke, the words formed directly in my mind. "Welcome, Sheriff. I have been waiting for you." "Let them go," I said, raising my weapon. "They are beyond your help now. The change has begun. Soon they will wake, and Barrow will have 32 new wanderers." I looked at the rows of transforming people. Some showed more advanced changes than others. Tommy Kakic, the first to disappear, barely looked human anymore. Dr. Chen still retained most of her original appearance, but I could see the elongation beginning in her limbs. "Why?" I asked. "The long dark calls to us. It is our time to move, as we have moved for thousands of years. Your people disturbed our rest with their digging. Now we reclaim what was always ours. The research station. They'd been drilling core samples from the permafrost, bringing up organic material from deep beneath the surface, material that included remnants of these creatures. genetic material, something that somehow retained the ability to transform human beings into copies of the original species. The samples, I said, you infected the people who handled them. The change spreads through contact, through breath, through proximity. All who encounter us carry the seed of transformation. That's when I realized the truth. I'd been exposed. Everyone who'd been investigating the disappearances had been exposed. Mary Uki, Mayor Konkuk, Principal Natar, Father Kowalski. We were all infected. The creature moved closer, and I could sense the ancient presence within it. Permafrost and time and something else, something that made my chest clench with sudden emptiness. You feel it now, it said. The need, the craving for something beyond normal sustenance. Soon you will understand. I did feel it, a gnawing emptiness in my chest that had nothing to do with physical hunger, a need for something I couldn't name. How long? I asked. The change takes different amounts of time for different people. Days, weeks, but it always completes itself. You cannot fight what you are becoming. I looked at my hands. In the flashlight beam, I could see the skin beginning to pale. The fingers looked longer than they had that morning. The transformation had already begun. Tornarsuk stepped back, giving me space to process what I'd learned. Around us, the 32 captives continued their slow metamorphosis. Some twitched and shifted in their sleep, as if experiencing dreams they couldn't escape. There has to be a way to stop this, I said. There is no stopping it, only accepting it. Join us willingly, and the transition will be easier. Fight it and suffer until your human mind finally breaks. The creature gestured toward the sleeping figures. See how peaceful they are. They stopped fighting days ago. Now they dream of the wandering, of the satisfaction that comes with purpose. I thought about Elijah Anungnatoguk's words. You don't stop Tornarsuk. You appease it, or you avoid it. But there might be a third option. The old stories, I said. Your people used to make offerings during polar night to keep you satisfied. The offering sustained us. Yes, but your generation forgot the old ways. They stopped providing for us, so we learned to provide for ourselves. What if we brought back the offerings? Would you let these people go? The creature tilted its massive head, considering the transformed cannot be unchanged. But perhaps the others could be spared, if the offerings were sufficient. What kind of offerings? Sustenance, life force, purpose, the same things we have always required. I felt sick. It was asking for regular sacrifices, regular offerings to keep it from hunting the entire town. But as I stood in that underground chamber, watching 32 innocent people slowly transform into something else, I realized it might be the only choice that would save anyone. I need time to think, I said. Time you do not have. The change accelerates as polar night deepens. In 3 days, these will wake as full wanderers. They will spread through your town like wildfire. Everyone will be infected. 3 days, 72 hours to find a solution. And if I agree to your terms, regular offerings in exchange for leaving the rest of the town alone, then Barrow will know peace during the dark months. A few lives given willingly to save many. It is how things were done for centuries before your people forgot their place. I looked around the chamber one more time, at Tommy Kakik's elongated form, at Dr. Chen's changing face, at all the others who had been condemned by circumstance and bad luck. Then I turned and walked back toward the tunnel entrance. You have until midnight tomorrow, the creature called after me. Choose wisely, Sheriff. Your own transformation will be complete soon. You will understand our needs, whether you wish to or not. As I climbed out of the shaft, I could feel the changes accelerating in my body. My joints ached, my skin felt tight, and underneath it all, that gnawing emptiness grew stronger with each passing hour. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my office, staring at reports and trying to find another solution. Any solution that didn't involve sacrificing innocent people to appease an ancient creature. By morning, the physical changes were becoming obvious. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed skin that had taken on a grayish tinge. My fingers had definitely grown longer, and my nails were starting to curve into claw-like points. More disturbing was the psychological change. The emptiness had evolved from a vague craving into a specific need. I found myself thinking about the people I'd interviewed over the past few days, remembering how they'd moved, how their life force had felt when they were afraid. I was becoming one of them. Mariuki called around noon. "Sheriff, we've got problems. People are starting to change. Jim Kanguk hasn't answered his door all morning, and when I looked through his window..." She didn't finish, but I understood. The infection was spreading faster now, accelerated by proximity to the source. I drove through town, checking on everyone who'd been involved in the investigation. Principal Natar was at the school, but she'd locked herself in her office and wouldn't come out. Father Kowalski was secured in the church, praying continuously over the radio. The changes were visible in all of them. Pale skin, elongated features, and that same empty look in their eyes that I saw in my own reflection. By evening, I'd counted 14 people showing signs of transformation. The creature had been right. If this continued, everyone in Barrow would be infected within days. As midnight approached, I found myself standing outside the research station, knowing I had to return to that underground chamber, had to give Tornarsuk my answer. But I'd also made a decision that the creature wouldn't expect. Hidden in my parka were 6 blocks of industrial explosive, borrowed from the construction supplies at the municipal building. If I couldn't save the people already transformed, maybe I could prevent the infection from spreading further, even if it meant bringing down the entire cavern system on top of myself. The creature was waiting for me, in the same chamber where I'd left it. The 32 captives had changed even more dramatically. In the past 24 hours, several were beginning to stir, as if waking from long dreams. "You have made your choice," Tornarsuk said as I approached. "Yes," I replied. "I have. I showed it the explosive charges. Everyone goes free, or everyone ends here, including you." The creature's yellow eyes narrowed. "You would destroy yourself to spite us." "I'd destroy myself to save my town, and the others who are already changing. Your friend Mary, your mayor, the priest, and the teacher. They will become wanderers regardless of what happens here." That was the part I'd been trying not to think about. The 14 people already infected would complete their transformation, whether I eliminated the source or not. They would become creatures like this one, driven by the same ancient needs. But maybe their numbers would be small enough to manage. Maybe they could be reasoned with, or relocated, or... I was grasping at possibilities, and we both knew it. "There is another way," the creature said. "Accept your transformation, become our guide, direct us to wander selectively, taking only what we need to survive. The alternative is chaos, as the newly changed lose themselves to hunger." It was right. Without guidance, the infected people of Barrow would become monsters. They'd hunt indiscriminately, spreading the infection until nothing human remained in northern Alaska. With leadership, they might learn restraint, and in return, we take what we need from the outside world: travelers, researchers, people who won't be missed. Barrow itself remains safe. I looked at the rows of sleeping figures. Some were already beginning to wake, yellow eyes opening in elongated faces. In a few hours, they would be fully transformed, ready to wander. The explosive charges felt heavy in my pocket. I could end this now, collapse the entire chamber system, and bury the source of the infection, but it wouldn't save the people already changing, and it wouldn't stop them from eventually spreading the transformation to other communities. Or I could accept the creature's offer, guide the transformed into becoming selective wanderers rather than indiscriminate predators. Neither choice was good, but one might prevent a larger catastrophe. I set down the explosives. What do I need to do? That was 3 months ago. I'm recording this confession from a cabin 200 miles south of Barrow, where I've been living since the Alaska State Police finally arrived to investigate the disappearances. They found an empty town and no evidence of what had happened to the missing people. The official report blamed extreme weather and equipment failures at the research station, mass evacuation due to infrastructure collapse, the kind of bureaucratic language that explains nothing while sounding official. The truth is more complicated. 14 people completed their transformation that night. Under my guidance, they learned to control their needs, to wander selectively, to target people who wouldn't be missed, drifters, criminals, researchers working alone in remote locations. They've become very efficient at it. The others, the 32 who were further along in their change, became something else entirely. Scouts, wanderers who range far from Barrow, looking for new territory and new sources of sustenance. I've heard reports of strange disappearances from villages across northern Canada and Siberia. The infection is spreading, but slowly, carefully, under control. As for me, I'm not fully transformed yet. The process seems to work differently when you accept it willingly, rather than fighting it. I retain my human appearance most of the time, though I can feel the creature waiting beneath my skin. The emptiness is constant now, a gnawing need that colors every thought and decision, but I've learned to satisfy it in ways that don't harm innocent people. There are always predators who prey on others, people who make the world worse by their presence. They provide the same sustenance as anyone else. I'm telling you this story because the pattern is expanding. What happened in Barrow was just the beginning. The infected are establishing territories across the Arctic, each group guided by someone like me, someone who chose cooperation over resistance. If you live in a remote northern community, watch for the signs. Missing persons reports that don't make sense, strange tracks in the snow, children having nightmares about creatures with glowing eyes. And if you start feeling empty, in ways that have nothing to do with physical needs, if your reflection begins to look wrong in the mirror, don't fight it. Find me. I can teach you control, help you channel the emptiness in directions that won't destroy the people you're trying to protect. It's not the life you planned, but it's better than the alternative. The alternative is losing yourself completely to an ancient need that won't be denied. Tornarsuk was right about one thing. You can't stop the transformation once it starts. You can only learn to live with it. Share this story. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you want to hear more. And if you're watching this from somewhere north of the Arctic Circle, maybe we'll meet someday. I'll be the one who still looks human. For now,